began working with Grindlays Bank in Mumbai. Perhaps acknowledging that his true calling lay elsewhere, he joined the Progressive Artists Group, where other budding artists such as Souza, Raza and Husain would meet to discuss and nurture art. Attracting the attention of connoisseurs in group and solo exhibitions held from 1949 onwards, with Dr. Homi Bhabha among the first to purchase his painting for the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mr. Khanna quit the 9-to-5 job rut in favor of the delicious insecurities of the art world. Advertising beckoned too, but here Mrs. Khanna's wifely wisdom intervened and Mr. Khanna became a full-time artist. Widely travelled with numerous fellowships and awards to his credit, notably the Rockefeller Fellowship in 1962 and the Padma Shri in 1996. Mr. Khanna has participated in various exhibitions all over Europe, held over 40 solo exhibitions and won acclaim for his works. His paintings are largely in the tradition of the realists, though imbued with his often ironic perceptions of the modern world. Significant historical events are reflected in his canvases. For example, a famous painting titled The News of Gandhiji's Death, or another of generals and politicians brokering partition amidst the skeletal remains of humanity. Early memories of Da Vinci's painting, Christ's Last Supper, and meetings with fellow artists surface in The Last Bite and So He Looked Away. The little noticed and mundane have also caught his eye, poignantly transformed by his aesthetic sensibilities and dexterous brush strokes. So we have an entire series of paintings on truck art and also Gupshup at Gyaniji's, an artistic rendering of the waterhole of migrant labourers in Delhi's Nizamuddin area. Perhaps the most famous of all is the marching band, a brilliantly ironic depiction of the North Indian wedding tamasha, the cacophonous aging bandmasters plodding in their gaudy uniforms. As art critic Swaminathan has said, what makes it art and lifts it out of the transient are the abiding elements of the tragic, the sublime, and the ridiculous which are woven into it. Mr. Khanna is also known to be an excellent raconteur. His erudition and wide-ranging experiences shine through his conversations, spiked with insightful anecdotes. Today we are privileged to not only see his works, but also to hear him in person. I now invite Mr. Krishen Khanna to the dais.
The easel painting, the 2x4, 4x6 with four sides to it, is really has come to stay more or less, has been there for the last 200 or 250 odd years, possibly a little more than that. And I think what happens is that people are beginning to edge out of it. They feel that what is governing these paintings needs a change, because there is a constriction in this particular thing. Everything has a constriction, but this having been practiced for so long, you're coming almost to the end of your tether. You know, how much can you do within it? Thereby hangs a little story. I was once at a very small dinner party, with two other distinguished painters. There was Rufino Tamayo and Mata, and this was in Mata's house, and Mata took us to his large studio, which is like a big barn, and there he was painting a picture. Well, Tamayo asked him, after Mata was a raconteur, and he went on talking a great deal, and you could see that Tamayo was rather sort of perceptibly quiet when he was listening to all this. And finally he asked, he said, Roberto, tell me, what is the centrality of painting? So Roberto Mata says, centrality is the pain in my heart. And the senior painter, Tamayo, said, rubbish. it's geometry. You know, you're painting a picture. No matter what you do, you're governed and controlled by geometrical considerations. When color comes into play, the linear geometry is made more complicated, and thereby that's how it's managed to survive to this day. Swaminathan called it, you know, the color geometry of space, which is what it is. However, what has happened, I think, since then is that there have been various offshoots which have been going, you know, into installations and blah blah, lots of other things which have come, but these are not directly connected. It's a way out which has got nothing to do with painting. I mean, you're not extending painting into that. When I was asked to do this mural by my friend Ajit Haksa, who was then the chairman of ITC, he took me there to the building wasn't up yet. It was only on paper, and he showed me this thing, the paper drawing. And I'm no good at reading paper drawings, I mean, these plans and whatever. So he says, now what do you say? This area and so on could do with a mural, this dome. It's a large dome. It's over 4,000 feet of area, square feet. So I said yes, it's a very good idea, you know, and so on. But gradually, as the thing progressed and as the dome began, this vastness of this thing, with these large members going up, it's like a Buddhist vihar, you know, with these two ends which are central points, and in between these rafters flow, and they go up to a height of something like 30 feet or more. So when I saw this thing and coming up, I didn't know what to do. I've never done. So he said, listen, how long do you think it will take you? 3 months? 6 months? So I said, I don't know, I've never done anything like this, so I can't possibly say, and you've never ordered anything as large as this. So I'll try and do it, but I've never done anything. I still don't know what I'm going to do, as I don't know what I'm going to say. So he said, okay, well, try and be fast because we've got this coming on, this conference, etc., etc. And when the dome was completed, I really didn't know what to do, because these members came up, you see, in between. However, I had no hesitation in involving my friends, and I asked Akbar Padamsi, was a pal of mine. I said, Akbar, what does one do here? He said, oh, fill in a figure in each one, you know, and people looking down at you. So that didn't appeal to me too much somehow, and I went to Ramachandran, and Ramachandran actually had worked on mural painting in Shantiniketan, and Ramu came out with an idea which is very good, and which sort of unlocked my hesitations, you see. He said, you got to do something. Don't be intimidated by the members that climb up like that. You do something as if the whole scene is being enacted behind the members. So it's like a panorama which floats from around these members. So that was fine. And then of course Ramu, being Ramu, he said, well, I said, well, can you lay it out? So he did, you know, almost overnight he did drawings for the whole thing. I mean, surprising. And I said, well, yeah, it seems plausible, but somehow those drawings didn't fit into my way of thinking and my way of doing things, you see. So he said, well, you do what you like, but anyway, that's it. Then the problem came that, you see, they built this great big this ceiling, but it was fabricated. I mean, there was only canvas there, and splattered with kind of coarse material to give it a shape, give it the feeling of a ceiling. It wasn't a ceiling at all. It was a sham, And these members which went up, they were not architecturally necessary either. They were just visually necessary. See. So I told Huxley, I said, you talk of painting the ceiling, but it isn't there. There's nothing there. So he said, well, I mean, work it out. Do what you want with it. I then had to think about what material to use, how to set about this thing, you know. And I tried zinc, and painting with acrylic on zinc, and we left it. The drawings looked good at the time, but then I read a tract on this thing, on the feasibility of using zinc, etc. And the tract definitely said, don't do this because the colors are going to change. So that was that. So I abandoned that idea. The only thing that I could really think of was that we would have to build the roof with plywood and paint on canvas, and then finally stick this canvas on the plywood. I then started on this particular mode, measuring. I mean, I had a sketchbook. The sketchbook isn't a sketchbook at all. It's a sort of measurements. This is 3 feet, goes up to so on, and this is the angle at which it goes. You see, when the whole thing curves, like it's in 3 stages. You see, it goes like that, and then again like that. It narrows each time, and then goes up like that, and then finally the middle section that goes all the way across like that in the sky part of it. So I got a carpenter who was a very good carpenter. And I told him that this is what he'll have to do, and he said, okay, so let's start. So he started, he made 3 panels. I put canvas on these, I did canvases, measuring my canvas to be slightly bigger than the wooden part that was going to exactly fit into these members, you see. And 3 panels went up, and I heaved a sigh of relief because they looked good. And then people were passing by, they say, ye kya ho raha hai? What's happening? And how is it going to be, etc., etc. So an interest was generated, you see. And we thought, well, let's capitalize on this as far as the hotel is concerned. They put up a little plaque on it saying that this is a monument in progress, a mural in progress, you see. Well, fine. And then as I went along, I found that this was terribly different to painting pictures in the studio. I mean, the easel paintings, I mean, there's nothing that had no bearing on what I was doing, because I would have to create unities between the horizontal as well as the vertical. I mean, I couldn't be doing sort of one set in one thing and another set in another. And over 4,000 square feet of area, I had to maintain unity, otherwise it was going to bust. So this was a big challenge, you know, huge challenge that this had to be. So how do you create sort of the fundamentals of unity in an area that large? And the idea came to me because the wooden members which went all the way across, they had a certain color. It was wooden, timber, and I thought, well, let's make a mother color which takes off this color, works with this color. So we spent time trying to match this color with various inputs, you know, Winsor and Newton, this, that, and the other, all going in certain proportions, and all these proportions were being jotted down. Okay, so much of this, so much of that, and so on. In the meantime, Gurcharan had come to me, been brought to me actually by Manjeet Baba. Manjeet said, there's a young painter friend of mine, he's stuck in a groove, he wants to get out, and could he work with you? So I said, fine, bring him. So he came. Of course, I knew him, and I didn't know why he was making this, my young friend, but I knew he was working in the studio right across. So he was prepared to work. And it was very good because it took him completely away from what he was doing, and he started working with me. And I said, now we make this mother color. This is where we begin. that this is the geru that you are going to be making, not for 2 panels, but for maybe 60 panels. So how do we make it? And we better make it, we can't make so much of the paint, it will dry in the meantime. So we got to have the proper proportions that we are putting in of each kind of color to make this particular color. So this was noted, and then Manjeet helped in this thing, and then the color was produced. Each time we had to do it, in bulk, in quantity. He was produced this color, and we proceed. I asked, I said, now what's going to happen around it? I mean, it's fine. We've got the idea that it's going to go around, but what will go around? And it occurred to me that since the format was such, like so, spiraling up, it couldn't have a beginning and an end. It is circular. And so the idea then came that there was this Chinese traveler guy who came here many, many years ago. And he saw India, and he made a document of this thing and wrote down what India is, what people are like, and etc., etc. So then he comes back again, you see, after many years. And I'm saying he's coming back now, you see. So I plant him in my picture that he's seeing India today. And he sees that there are changes, of course, but they're not such radical, huge changes. The civilization remains more or less as it is. I mean, it is a distinct entity unto itself. And this is what he saw. Now I've painted this guy. You'll see him when I show you the pictures. He's standing there and he's watching. And he was, in a sense, the purveyor of what was going on. And the other thing is that India then is a big place. So what do we do? I mean, how do I choose this India? How do I pictorially put it in? What are my pictorial options in this thing? Ancient Indian tracts, they tell you that all the 9 emotions, the Navarasa, and their declensions, various things that happen from them and so on. Now, this is not a formula that is there. It is a methodology, actually, that you've got to enrich whatever you're doing. You can, and it's better to enrich rather than subtract. You're not making a subtractive kind of statement a la 20th century where you want to become pure. It is not pure. So every emotion has to be put in it. Added to this, and this is going to fill up my whole area. No, these are inputs. Then added to this are the elements in which we live. There's the earth, there's water, there's fire, there's the air. And these have to be indicated, these have to be realized within the work itself, which again gives you an excuse, if you like to call it, and how to expand, how to work within these particular categories. And then there's the human being, of course. The human beings are there, but life is more than human beings. There are animals involved, and there are birds which are involved. So it's a compound of all these things which go into the making of this particular mural. It doesn't pretend to be, and it can't be the complete universe, but it's aiming to be. It has the components which comprise so much of our lives. The people there are vocations which are there. There is dancing bears, people using animals and dogs proliferate, dogs in all kinds of street dogs. Then there are dogs which are tamed by people, dogs which bring their stick to their master to beat them with, all sorts of things which go on. There are human beings in yatra, which is quite a thing here. Then there is the mosque, the people, there's a funeral which is a necessary part of our lives, unfortunately or fortunately, that's there, and mourning which goes on. I didn't want it to be a sort of a dowdy old affair, you know. Then it also gave me an excuse to introduce my friends in this thing, that they're actors in this whole bit. For instance, you'll see there's this people who are mourning over a dead body in a mosque or in a place, and there's Mulk Raj Anand sitting there, and Mulk Raj Anand, as was his wont, is discussing Indian art and aesthetics, you see. And in another, something which happened to me, as a matter of fact, on a very grave occasion, when I put that in, people are going into a mosque, there's a certain thing to be done there, it's all very holy and all very nice, and there's a fellow who's picking somebody's pocket and taking 10 rupees out of it, you know, right now, because these anomalies, these things just go on, and it's a part of our lives, and there are a number of these things. And then there are my own secret little things which are there, which will never come out unless you look very, very closely. There's Geeta Kapoor, a great art critic of contemporary India, walking along, and somebody in the bicycle at the back turning around looking at her, which is nice, and then she's holding a book with her fingers, and the book is, you know, what ails Indian art. You can't read it, but it's there. So there are lots of my personal puns and funds go into this, their inputs which I keep putting in to amuse myself, and they've amused other people too. So it's not all sort of a holy kind of thing. The main thing was that the fact that really comes through is it's not painted from a single point of visual view. It is many perspectives in it, and that is very traditionally Indian. In many Ajanta, for instance, you see there's none of this business of making a visual perspective and working according to. There are many things happening at the same time. What actually unites them is what Swami called, you know, the color geometry of space. It's the painting itself that unites these things. The painting becomes a very cohesive factor in the making of a work, and that is, as a painter, as an artist, I think that is what I strove towards and tried to tell my chaps who were working with me, this is what you got to do. This was one thing, and I think that there's a great future in this. I think it's also very important from a sociological point of view that we have to devote our energies towards public art. The great things have been done in public art. It's only the late 19th century, 20th century, which wanted the individual, you know, came on with democracy, I might add, that, you know, the individual is important, yes, individual is important, but the individual quirks then become individual quirks, and they do not have, and it doesn't matter whether they relate to you or X, Y, or Z, they relate to the person who is doing it. So it all goes inwards, it doesn't go outward, it doesn't connect. And unfortunately, I think it is equally important to know what are our common factors, what are the things that unite us, what are the things that are which we can share. You know, the whole business of sharing can be there, which creates a great feeling of warmth, a great feeling of give and take, and I think less of egocentrism, which has been a kind of besetting sin, I think, of the 20th century in a sense. It began very well, but everything is carried to an extreme, and everything, then everybody for himself, and you know, devil take the hindmost, you're not bothered about anybody else. And I think this mural painting in a sense, is not a one-man job. I mean, there are many people involved. It's not an individual, it is an individual exercise, but at the same time, there are a lot of inputs which other people put in or work with it. I mean, this mural had people, when Manjeet worked on it, he would come to me, he said, Paji, main kar da. I said, haan karo, go up. So he'd climb up and start doing. He did one or two parts, I'll point them out. He had a go at it. And I asked, various painters came and they said they do this, they do that. I said, yeah, well, have a go up. Sometimes we'd agree, sometimes we wouldn't agree. Sometimes I'd let them do it and then I'd change it. But this whole business was a very rich experience, where you're dealing with artists, and the thing then belongs not to you, to the artist, belongs to everybody. And I think that was marvelous. I think now, having spouted enough about this thing, art has to be seen and not talked about. You can talk about it only for that long. So I will now show you the pictures, and if whenever necessary, I'll interject and say a few words. And I leave you then enough room to ask questions or talk, or make your own expressions or expressions of judgment, etc. Can we have the lights out, and we can. Now this is one side of it, and the whole then extends the other way, and to a similar situation, a similar center with these beams coming in, and in between the two you have all these beams then going all the way across. But you will see that in the other reproductions. Now this is a part of the rocks and so on. Unfortunately or fortunately, it's not coming in sequence in that sense. I'm not showing you the sequence as it progresses, but then, as I said, this is it's a circular movement, so it doesn't really matter. I mean, you can move from here to there and so on, but the general tenor of the thing is maintained. Now here, that's the sky, and then this is the rock formation. Can you change, please? Now that's a goat coming down, because from on this hilly kind of situation which is placed there, and you'll see a little, maybe the next one, it's coming down, and there's a little cave further down in which there's a tiger waiting for it. That's the tiger there, if you can see it, and he's just waiting to pounce, and that's what happens. Okay, change. This is further down. I mean, it's quite unconnected with what went upstairs. I was showing a part, the historical process also. There's an elephant. You can't see, but the elephant, in his trunk, there's a little boy who's taking a free ride, as it was, curled up there. There's one of our ex-rulers sitting there with a Victoria cross on his chest. He's unmarried, but then what they used to call the fishing fleet is out, young married ladies who wanted to get rich husbands, and so they're having a little conversation on top of the hoda there, and the president's bodyguard is there on the right, and an old man, and so forth. And this will continue. I mean, this is the part, the barber, which is we've had barbers for a long time. Okay, that shows you the whole in a more accurate kind of way. I mean, it gives you the whole span of it. It gives you an idea of what the cupola or the hall was like. It extends the other way, as I said, and then the same thing repeats itself on the other side. Can you change? And each one of these is painted in. Now you'll see the details in some of the others. Which change. So water had to be shown, and here's animals in water, and there's a boy swimming with his head, he's underwater. Change. Okay, now that is the goat which you saw there, and here's another one, a ram coming down, and the tiger is on the right hand side. Okay, change. And here's one of the fellows just sitting there with it's quite usual. It's a good way to spend your time although smoking isn't allowed anymore, but he's, since I was working for, this was done for ITC, which is the tobacco company, I, I had to flatter them a little bit. So he's smoking himself. Okay. There's your tiger again. I'm sorry, it's moving here and there, but you can basically get an idea of what, if you saw it, you would be looking at it like this too. You know, your eye moves from one to the other to the other. There's the tiger there, and things are happening in between. And this is the rocky surface. This is the, I was showing that the terrain varies too, you know. So there is these hills, mountains, above which there's all that blue ice. Change. Here's an alcove. These alcoves were like, so if you can see my hand, they were sort of bent, little corner pieces, you know. There were a number of these in this whole mural, and I put these water birds there. The painting of these is very difficult. So the corner pieces, and these were done in my studio, not on location. And they were reassembled on location after the whole thing had been done, and the wooden back placed. So in the studio, since this is a cupola, I didn't know, you know, how do you paint a cupola like that? So I found that if you split it, the two sides, down the center, then what is a vertical, you'll be painting as a horizontal. You know, as a diagonal actually, not as a horizontal, you'll be painting diagonals which are actually, when assembled, become verticals. Now, this is, in theory, this seems right, but when you're doing it, it seems stupid. You think you're painting a vertical, but you're actually painting a diagonal. But the thing is that when it's put together, it looks all right. And you wouldn't know, but there was a slit down the center of this, birds and all, which had then to be reassembled. When reassembled, it looks like this. But the making of it was a different proposition, very different to what a painter might be doing, for instance, on a 2x4 canvas. Okay, next. This is a fellow on somebody's shoulder. And this is what I used to do to cook. He used to take us every day out, and so it comes back, you know, it's a childhood memory of this thing. It's sitting, you can't see it, I'm afraid, but there's a body there on whose shoulders this person is sitting, all on their way to the yatra. Okay, change. Now that's the yatra going, there are people going from a temple, which you'll see a little later. I mean, it's going in reverse in a sense, but they're coming out and they're going across this whole landscape here, and they're going up there from where you saw the tiger and the goats leaping down. Change. This is a detail of two of the yatris going, you know, on their way, young and old. I mean, that's a part of the yatra. Okay. This is the water birds. When I showed the water body, then you paint the water birds alongside with it, and these are storks which are known for their lovingness to each other. Okay. And here you have the Indian crow. You notice one thing, that the backdrop of this is red, and it's a color I'm particularly fond of, is Indian red. And I have no hesitation in telling you that I get this from Basholi, old Indian miniatures. They are not interested in painting skies, the color of skies as such, but they are using it in pictorial format, and how to bring out the true value of what you're trying to say, and also relating it to a complete pictorial concept. And here you have, so the red with a tree which is, actually you can't see it, you have to believe me, but it's a light green, the tree, and there's a white building here, and the crow, of course, black. Okay. Here's a person sleeping, which is a fairly common sight in this country. People relaxing all the time. Somebody watching over there. Hard work. Go on. Change, please. Now, this is an interesting picture, and I found it very interesting because I did this picture. As I said, you're like an easel painting. And the monkey, the way I did it, the monkey was actually marvelous, and it came out. Well, when I put it up at 20 feet, you couldn't see the monkey. You couldn't see all the mimicry that I'd done to the face, the painting of it and everything. It was just invisible. So I had to take it down, and I had then to devise ways and means of doing it so that it would make sense on location. Now, Manjeet painted the Shivalingam. He said he was keen on to do that, and I didn't forbid it. I said, go ahead and do it. So he climbed up. We had the structure going up. I mean, that was the other thing, that the whole business of the hotel was disrupted quite considerably because we had to put this vast structure, which was be wheeled in, is huge, and then you had to clamber up. And I was a little younger those days, but maybe if I was asked to do this again, I'd think twice. But here we have the temple on top, people coming in and going out. This was Ramachandran's idea, that you put a temple there because it'll give then a scope. There's a pictorial idea behind it. See, it gives a continuity of people going in and then out onto another terrain. It gives you a necessary connection, a pictorial connection. And the sky above, rocks on this side, and of course over here, which you saw. And down below is the another temple. I mean, it's an entry to the temple from below and above. So it goes up like that. Okay? Change. This is the top of the temple. These are people going in. And that's the Shivalinga. And the bell being sounded there, and the conch being blown, and people were going there. The roof, actually, it's a very interesting. The roof had to be made to shine like the plates, like the slate, which is in hill temples and so on. So we did that by putting an underlayer of silver on the whole thing, and then painted on top of that. So it gave a sheen. It didn't give a shine. We didn't want a shine out of it, but we wanted the whole thing should be rich in its sight. And that's a lady who's scratching her ear, which is quite a common thing outside. Okay. This is on the other side. Actually, before this, there's a mosque here. On this side, there's a mosque, and these ladies here are actually they're mourners at a funeral. And right above, I mean, it's a sort of, old Delhi where houses go into each other and out and all that sort of thing. Very, very congested, very close. And this creates a sort of a situation for human beings as well, So here they are, and I'm trying to find out. There's a cat which is actually looking at a bird which is in a cage, and the cat is on the over there. Can you see it? Yes. Yeah. And all these buildings, of course, juxtapose each other, and then one of the problems was because I was working into a curvature, so you couldn't very well have a man or a person whose body would then be in the curvature, like he'd look as if he was deformed, So I had to measure that human beings can only be painted up to this place and up to this measure. Beyond that, you had to fill in another sort. And one of the things was foliage. You put in foliage because foliage is quite okay when it bends down, to the vision. Change. Now this is outside the mosque, which you see the person sitting there wanting, what, and the rams which are generally accompanying these places, just before Eid. There's a person standing inside there which you can't see, and you can barely see him in the original unless you look for him, because it's white on white, and it's very delicately painted, and can be viewed, of course, but not here, I'm afraid. Change. Here's a family going into the mosque. The child there. I mean, it's a close-up, of course, and a man and his woman. Change. And here's the funeral, and people are sad, and all this architecture and curves and whatever. And this is another alcove, a much bigger one, in which this is placed. And Mulk Raj is on the left. You see, they're all praying, I think, but Mulk is holding forth, on the extreme left. And you see, for instance, the color of the beam. Even here, it's viewable. The color of the beam and the color of the floor, and in between, there is a very strong relationship. It doesn't sort of separate it, These things, color binds these things. So that is the part of the mother color business I spoke about. That's Chacha Ji again. These are from the same scene. Further up, beyond the mosque, is Dhaba, which is again very friendly and usual kind of institution we all know. And there is pouring out tea is Khushwant Singh doing card seva. He's pouring out tea there. And now there's Mulk Raj there, the white-haired gent. What he is doing is he's actually picking a bone, so which he was fond of doing, arguing. He's picking a bone physically with a chicken bone he's got in his hand. And this is Professor Mujib, who's sitting here. And right behind him, holding the tray on top, is Iqbal Malik, my old friend. So I've put in my friends and people I know and liked. So it's a composite from my point of view too. Okay. One thing more. That's me in my younger days with my back to it all. Since there's no signature on this thing, you see, I had to put myself into put in some sort of a claim that I did do this work. So I'm involved in this mural. Okay? That's Khushwant. I told Khushwant about this thing. I gave him the book, and Khushwant has taken several people to show his portrait. Okay, change. That's the same thing. That's Mulk, that's me, and that's Iqbal Malik, if anybody knew him then. Okay? On the right, again, is a portrait. It's K.K. Nair, they're reading newspapers and whatever. Now, I had to put in something that, you're looking up at the mural and so on, but don't think that the mural is not looking down at you. So here's a fellow with his binoculars trained directly onto you, so you don't get away. I mean, you're being captured too. So this brickwork is painted in, by the way. The brick is not actually brick there. It was painted in. That's the artistic work, making the mural. Okay. Now, this is, our cities do have red light districts and so on. So here's a lady who's peeping out from her the chicks that she's got. And if I'm right, the next picture should be of the guy who's looking at her, but peeping Tom, you know. Okay, the street. I was showing street animals and so on, and this chap is being, you know, the bear fellows with me. Okay, and here's the director of of the. It's not Huxa, but another man who was actually conducting the affairs of this mural. And he is sitting there watching things in progress as it was, and he's summoned his dog. You see, wherever you've seen a lot, there are a lot of dogs in this place who are friendly and so on, but you never see a dog who brings his own stick in his own mouth to be beaten with, you know. But this happens in the corporate sector. So there he is. There he is. There's the dog. And he says, "Please beat me." Okay, please. Okay. And this is, they're watching the bear, and has a tourist at the back with his camera, and he's photographing, and these are people looking at the bear whom you saw just now. Okay. And that's the Chinese pilgrim who came to record India, and he's watching everything. He's a part of the mural now, who's seeing the world around him. Okay, and this is a part of the street action, the theatre, the people who amuse you. He's holding a pole on his teeth with a child on top of the pole. This marvelous feature, like circus, outside circus. Okay, and that him again. You see, you got these contortions down below, great yoga experts, and here's a fellow who's actually he's on the tightrope, and what he's doing is that if you look hard enough, he's tossing not balls and things in the air. These are heads of known personalities, which he's tossing up and catching. You know, he's juggling with heads. Okay. Change. Yeah. This is quite a typical thing. He's a shoe mender who's doing the juti, and the man sitting down below having his juti done. You know, he's part of the set of tradesmen that we have, and have always been there, I suppose. Okay, and that's the barber, and has the unhappy gent sitting there having his block knocked off. You know. Okay. That's the VC sitting up there on the elephant with his lady. The funny thing was, when I was doing these elephants, because the elephant's a pretty large creature, you know, and how do you put him in 2 feet? I mean, it's a problem. So and he's got to be split between maybe 3 sections, you see. And now when I was doing this in the studio, I would have to do a section by section of the elephant, which is quite a feat, because you are leaving in the width of the beam is being taken into account. You're leaving that out, and you're making only a section. So actually, the thing in the studio looked weird. You know, you have an elephant which is sort of sliced up, you know, like so, and I felt very unhappy, and I didn't know how it would work actually but our calculations are so good. I didn't know I was so good at measuring things so precisely that they fitted. Now this is actually assembled. It's an assembled unit of three separate chunks of elephant, you know, with the guys on top and everything. Okay, this again is the usual sight, card players and so on. And these guys are playing cards here. Right on top you'll see, I think a little later, the lady who was shouting, "Kya kar rahe ho? Ghar aao." Please, next. Yeah. There she is. She's bending over and looking at these guys playing cards underneath. Quite a typical kind of building, actually, a mixture of buildings which is there. Here again, the buildings don't see the buildings which I painted. They don't actually confirm, or they don't confine themselves to an architectural rule. I mean, if an architect saw these things, he'd think, well, there's been an earthquake or something. It's impossible for these things to go up like that. But I'm painting a picture, I'm not painting a building, I'm not making a building, I'm referring to a building. So the buildings occupy space which is necessary, where it becomes necessary space, and it's a sufficient indication that it's a building. Okay? And that's a total view. There's a fellow down here playing here, and this is a panoramic view of the whole thing, with the building going all the way up. This building again had to be done in sliced up and connected, you see. The bottom panel, the top panel. See, the difficulty really in this mural was that you had to maintain a unity between the vertical and the horizontal. Both. You couldn't sort of think of the thing as only one set, and which you do in a painting. For instance, it's a far easier to maintain a unity within in a canvas, however big, which is manageable. But in a huge mural which you're doing, it's altogether a very different proposition, and you have to have skills which you have to calculate. I actually had to calculate the quantum of canvas I would need to cover the whole thing from one end to the other, and I used arithmetical formulae to do that. Okay? I don't want to tell you that I was very bad at arithmetic, but I had to do this. Has those three panels, as you see, of the individuals you've seen, but here you see the totality of these fellows. Now there's a certain connection which is being made by the use of the color white, which runs in, and the color of the member of the wooden member again tallies or relates to the color of the boy which is on the thing, and so forth. And even here, these colors, they're earth colors. It's sort of Mars violet, Indian red. And these colors are sort of mixed together in certain proportions, and they create this kind of unity, I think. Next, please. We come on to another section altogether now. This is nothing to do with the mural. This is my personal business of painting, since I painted some years ago. I was doing these truckwalas, and this again has splattered in. There are many. This is a much older work of free painting. The paint is applied very freely, thickly. It's not a linear proposition which is done. It's a very painterly proposition, and there it is. It's one of the many bandwalas I've done. Some of the others you'll see anon. Yeah, change. Oh, this one is come. This is actually a part of a series which I've just finished, or I'm still doing, which bears on the independence movement, and is very personal. That the independence movement, as it came to me when I was about 6 or 7, and as events were related to me by my cook, who was my great friend and my informer as to what was happening, you see. And this lady used to come to our house to teach my mother English. She would clamber up. Living is a complicated, complex thing, And what benefits some people, other people don't benefit that much. It's a give and take. It's a loss on one hand, a credit on the other, and this goes on. And she was English. She stayed in this country. She loved this country. You couldn't doubt her love for this country. But yet, she saw the movement, political movements as were going on. They were not in favor of having her there, and she was sad as a result. But here she was. I mean, she was quite a character who was teaching English. Miss Amory. Okay, next. This is one of the last pictures which I had done of my Tayaji, my uncle, at the time of partition. He was told at a moment, told in the evening that you better quit because the assassins are coming. This is in Pakpatan. And he and his family got into this tonga, ekka, which they had, and they were taken across by this young Muslim Kochwan whom they had, this tonga man boy who left them. And as he approached the border, there was a sentry there who said, "You can't go further." And he said, "Well, I have to go and leave Bebe, the old lady who was there, sitting there at the end. I got to go and leave the family. She can't walk. So what are you holding me back for?" He said, "Well, if you go, I'll shoot you." He said, "Well, then shoot me. I'm going anyway." And he did. He wasn't shot, fortunately. And then my Tayaji just gave him the keys to the house, to the tonga, to the ghodi and everything. And said, now, one thing I'd like to mention about this picture, it's quite large. It's 6 feet by 8 feet. So it's a big canvas. And it has many kind of hidden implications. For instance, the horse, for instance, is on the one tread, is on very firm ground, rocks going across, and the other foot is almost into thin air. You don't know where it is going to land, That was the situation at the time of partition. It was the uncertainty of the next move, where you're going to be, what you're going to be doing, what's going to happen to you, I experienced that myself. Anyway, this is a picture of my Tayaji going out of Pakpatan at that time. Right? One more, I think. Is that? Change? Oh, well, this is my favorite. The bandwalas. Almost every British institution has been ridiculed and spoken against and so on. But not the bandwalas, they are a heritage. They came down from the old days when they used to play in the bandstand. And people used to go after church to listen to the nice military music and whatever. So then thereafter, when everything went away, the bandwalas stayed, but in a same guise, but to a different purpose. They were no longer playing in bandstands. They were taking marching weddings. You can't have a wedding now without a band. So there you are, huffing and puffing, playing all sorts of tunes, contrary to each other. But never mind, it's fun and games. Okay, next. I painted a series of trucks. This is in the National Gallery of Modern Art. It's quite spooky. I did a whole fleet of trucks actually, and it's a very austere, somber picture. But then the whole subject matter, I think, is a very austere, somber subject matter, and it wouldn't have done for me to paint a happy picture out of this. It's on the street where we lived in Lahore, in this road. There was this dentist, P.C. Kaka, who used to sit there watching the world go by, and he didn't like the idea that during there were riots, and Congress processions would go attack shops, throw out their stuff, foreign material being good suiting being burnt and all that sort of. He didn't like that. Anyway, there you go. That's not a part of my bandwalas, by the way. Okay, let's have the next. This is another one of the truck series where whole thing is very linear, as you see, where people are sleeping inside, and inside, underneath, everywhere. It's their home. It's their workplace. It's their home. And that's how it is. And we thought we'd finished with this thing, but it still exists, unfortunately. And this is a Pieta, a large one which I did 2 years ago. It's a 6 feet by 8 feet painting. This is the man helping a chap out, who's. This is a fairly recent painting. This is a part of the Exodus again. The people going. It's a picture with quite a lot of zingy color. I mean, it's not a bright color, but it's a active color. This is a much earlier work again of the truck. People standing at the back of the truck, and they take on the same hue and color of whatever they're carrying and fetching. And if they're carrying sand, then they all look like sand men, or if they're carrying steel, then they all look very steely. But they assume the character of whatever they're functioning in. Okay? That's another bandwala there. 2 of them. And that's me in my studio. No, you can't see it, you see. But there are mice in the studio. My studio in Gadi was actually it was a universe unto itself, quite apart from me being an occupant to paint pictures. There were also the creatures that lived there also. Amongst them was a snake, there was a mongoose, there were many rats and things that came, there were spiders all over the place, and they would eat up the mosquitoes, of course. But I'll say I never killed anything. And they didn't bother me either, I mean, so we lived in harmony. Okay. This is a funny picture, in the sense that Swaminathan, who had a studio right next to mine, there was right across from our studios was a fruit shop. They were selling all sorts of juices and things, you see. So Swami said to me, he said, would you like me to buy you a fruit? Normally we would have a drink in the evening, you see, I mean a whiskey or something. But on this occasion he would say, I'll buy you a very nice anarka pani, anarka juice. So I looked at him, anarka juice, he said, yes, it's 80 rupees, So that's, you can't see him, but that's Swaminathan. Can you see it? That's Swaminathan here, offering his glass of juice to me. So, and the lettering on top, which is in Hindi on the shop. Okay. Oh, still more. This is the bandwala painting again. And this is a much earlier work, 1956, which I sent to Japan and then came back. It's been with me. And it's very strange. It was sold, and then the person it wasn't sold. It was taken away, and then the person finally came to me and said, "Can you? We are going into the wilds. We are leaving the city. We're going into like semi-retirement outside, and we are selling our silver, etc." I knew what was coming. So he wanted to sell this painting. He borrowed it from me. So I said, you want to sell my painting? He said, well, I thought of it. And I said, yeah. So he said, can you give me the name of a gallery which will buy it? So I didn't, and I threw him out. So finally, a couple of months later, Shankur Chaudhary says to me, he says, there's a fellow he met in Bombay who was hawking my painting around, all rolled up, and he's trying to sell it. So he said, you better go to Delhi and Krishen Khanna will buy it, which is what happened. But the painting was in such terrible condition that I had to spend quite a lot of money on getting it done. And financially it's been a big loss, but I'm glad to have the painting back. Oh, this is another truck. You can't make anything out of this. That's a truck. I was, you see, there are some of these pictures which don't make immediate sense, and they're not meant to, because what I was doing was not hiding the subject, but I was wanting to get your involvement, your interest into the picture, so that you would then discover what is what. Just as I fumbled my way through this painting, I was hoping that reverse procedure, that you would then fumble your way to the image itself, you know. So it was not out to sort of dodge you or anything, but to create an interest in the total painting. It was the process which mattered very much more. But then, you know, how long can you go on playing these games? I mean, then it's like breathing, it's like contracting and then expanding and contracting and expanding. Having done this, for instance, I would say, oh, enough of this now, why don't I paint a straightforward, straight picture, you know. So I do that too. And there's nothing, I don't have to abide by rules of that you must be, you know, follow lakir ke fakiri ban jao, you know, aisi baat nahi. It's quite a colourful picture. It's done after reading Vikram Seth's The Suitable Boy. And I told him about this too. It's a nice picture which I gave my wife. It's a very colourful picture. Okay? You have to take my word for that. This is another Pieta. Emmaus, I'm sorry, it's not Pieta, it's the Emmaus, where you know, Christ came and there was the believer and the non-believer. Yeah, so that's a theme which has fascinated me a long time. It still has its repercussions to this day. Those that believe and don't need proof, and those that need proof for everything, you know. So these guys are there. Okay.
One expects you to use tiles, stones, and material like that. In a sense, I believe you have used probably oil or acrylic. Then how does this differentiate you from a normal artist who uses the standard paints, except that maybe your canvas is vast?
I don't think the painting in different materials is perfectly possible. It in fact has been going on for much longer than the present business of painting in oil. Oil murals painted, and also then in other materials like water-based materials and so on. Ajanta is like that. Tiles, etc., come in only rather recently. In fact, not they are of recent vintage. It doesn't mean, I mean, there murals have been done in material, in metal as well. So it depends what you want to do. I mean, I don't think that there's you can it is necessary to follow only one medium, you know, all the way through. Whether you use oil or acrylic or metal or tile or whatever, it depends what you want. I don't think, for instance, my mural would have been possible if I had done tiles, you know. Another person might well have done it in tiles. In fact, Satish Gujral has used tiles, and with tiles which he made himself for him. But that's Satish and that's me. I mean, there are differences.
Practically being from an architectural background, felt a sense of perspectives lacking in the paintings.
As I said, that, you know, perspective is only one element in painting, and it is not. It hasn't been there all along and everything. It's relatively recent, actually. The whole business of perspective comes into existence in the Renaissance. It's doubtful if perspective or the use of perspective can accommodate every kind of vision. It is only actually a very privileged point of view. Whatever you see is seen from a particular point of view. You change yourself and then the whole thing changes, or should change. So you're only depicting a building or whatever from a specific point of view, and it is only true then. Now what happens, for instance, if you've got to be depicting many more things, multifarious things which are going on all over the place. I mean, what do you do then? Then your business of perspective is not going to work. It's not going to reveal all those things. So you have to then use different methodologies. And Indian painting, for instance, miniature painting, a lot of miniature painting, they don't rely upon perspective as such. Perspective was something which I think, I mean, I'm not an art historian, we have one here, but I think it was an imported device. And the Mughals were fascinated, the emperors, they saw this wonderful thing, and our chaps can also do it, and so on. So it sort of crept in that way, but it's by no means the totality of your armaments as a painter. You can use it, of course. You can use multiple perspectives to show that something is there and something is there, and use perspective on each different count. But you needn't use perspective at all. What really matters, what you're looking at actually, is what Swami, again, I'm quoting him, was that it's the color geometry of space. And how, I mean, changing of color, changing of tone, I mean, there are so many factors within color itself. There's not, red doesn't mean just red. Red means 20 different kinds of red, intensities of red. And how do they then juxtapose, and what relationships do they have then? So yes, indeed. I mean, I'm not using perspective in everything that I do. Even the mural doesn't have perspective in that regard. But it has a unity of vision, I think. I mean, considering the large area that it covers, you come away looking at it with a certain unified feeling. I don't know if I can answer this adequately, but that's what it is.
I wanted to ask, during painting this mural, was there any moment when you thought of quitting up or giving it up?
I would feel exhausted after doing a whole session of this thing. It took me 4 years to paint this mural. And quite honestly, when I see it now, I feel more exhausted looking at it now, thinking of all this energy that's been sort of congealed, which has gone in over 4 years on this thing. And honestly, if I took it on without knowing what was going to happen. But if somebody would tell me now that, will you do a mural this size now, I would say no.
If you had to do it again, would you want to do it differently, or?
I'm not like the television and the advertisements which go on repeating the same advertisement ad nauseum, to the point that you feel that if he's advertising this good, this is it's an advertisement, I'm not going to buy this thing at all. You got sick of it. So I mean, as a painter, I take it's de novo each time. It really is, and that's what keeps me alive.
How extraordinary were the decisions which had to be taken. I was taken back some 500, 600 years ago when I was listening to him. And I was listening to him, I also was taken back to an extraordinary poet of the 19th century, Nazir Akbarabadi, who talks about the humanity which is surrounding him, the kinds of foibles that we all have, the kind of ambitions that we have. It's not easy to pick and choose. Now, what was it that Ghalib said? Sat jalwa रूबरू है को मिजका उठाइए. सत जलवा रूबरू है जो मिजका उठाइए, ताकत नहीं के दीदार के सामा उठाइए. There are millions of sights that you can see around yourself, in front of yourself. You just have to lift your eyelashes a bit and be able to see. But how many of us have it in ourselves to look closely at the kind of humanity, the kind of empathy, the kind of penetration that Krishen does? The power of images is something which is incalculable, absolutely incalculable. I'll not keep you for more than a couple of minutes. I'll share a personal experience with you. A long time ago I saw Peter Brook's Mahabharata in Paris, and one of the images stuck in my mind for a number of years. It is this scene where Dronacharya is on the battlefield and the news is brought to him that his son Ashwatthama has been killed. It's not Ashwatthama, it is an elephant by the name of Ashwatthama. We all know the trickery in the Mahabharata and so on and so forth. And how the director Peter Brook had done that. There is Dronacharya seated on the floor, and there is a ghada right next to him, filled, we do not know with what. It was absolutely red water. And as he listens to the news of his son's death, he falls completely silent, picks up that ghada and pours over it, over his own head. It's like a stream of blood. And the scene ends over there. Now that image has been a part of my imaginarium, you might say. And every time I take a bath, sometimes I take a shower, sometimes I use the usual balti, and when I end my bath and I pour that water over my head, what is left in the balti, that image of Dronacharya comes to my mind. The image has a power which is beyond belief. When I see the bandwalas that Krishen has painted with such distinction, such empathy, I always go back in my own mind to my younger days when I used to go walk in front of the Lyallpur market near the Red Fort. There were all these bandwalas there, right? The Dhanna Band Company and the New Dhanna Band Company and so on and so forth. They're all sort of playing this tune, they're sort of practicing and so on at that particular time. Now that brought me to Krishen's paintings of the bandwalas, but when I look at the bandwalas in my own mind, I go back to the Lyallpur market where I see those bandwalas all over again and so on and so forth. When I see the truckwalas, I mean the laborers who are standing, in that little space which is at the edge of the truck and so on, it's something deeply moving. You cannot see a truckwala anymore. All these laborers, you cannot see them anymore without thinking of Krishen's paintings. You see them through the prism of those eyes and so on and so forth. The power of the image, what he has created in that mural at the Maurya and so on, is astonishing. I do not know what else to say except to say it's been a privilege, a great privilege, to have known him as a friend and to have been a member of this audience this particular evening. An audience which Diwan Manna and the Lalit Kala Akademi has assembled together for years now, but for event after event and so on. And I must acknowledge the success, the enthusiasm with which he does this. I was also moved by a statement which Krishen made to a journalist, who quoted him by saying that, how long will you paint? Right? And he says, till whatever I can. Till however long I can. And that is moving. He is a young man, but time bears down upon us all. Salima Hashmi is the daughter of the great poet Faiz Ahmad. Faiz is a friend of mine. And she once presented a book to me of her father's writings in English. Very few of us know that he wrote in English with as much success and as much eloquence as he did in Urdu. And she inscribed it for me in Urdu, a couplet of Faiz Ahmad Faiz, "Hum parvarishe laho qalam karte rahenge, jo dil pe guzarti hai raqam karte rahenge." Parvarishe laho qalam, law is takhti, qalam is qalam. हम परवरिश लहो कलम करते रहेंगे जो दिल पे गुजरती है रकम करते रहेंगे. And what else can one say? One doesn't get free of this kind of work, neither he nor I nor a number of people out here, because as Faiz said, नजाते दीदा और दिल की घड़ी नहीं आई. Neither the eyes are free, nor is the heart free, because that has yet to be obtained. चले चलो कि वो मंजिल नहीं अभी आई. Krishen, may God bless you. May I thank you very much.